Right, hello folks. As always, I wanted to just come back just to fill a bit of space up, really, because I've not posted on the channel in about 2 weeks now or something like that. Anyway, because I've been super busy as always. Um, but yeah, I want to do something as always a bit different, and I'm going to just openly admit that I've copied this format off my mate Rich from the Vickers Machine Gun Collection and Research Association. So what Rich does is he finds period images that show the Vickers machine gun in use, for example, and he picks out details and interesting little bits of information within those images that tell us either something about the Vickers machine gun or some wider detail in terms of military operations. And I'm going to copy that and do the same in a second. Um, so yeah, over the last couple of weeks I've been exceptionally busy as always. I'm currently working on the final write-up for a report about pillbox I surveyed with the Canal and Rivers Trust. I've been busy with work and all this stuff. I also just want to quickly say as well that I was going to do an update on my GoFundMe page literally just yesterday. I went on there, found it out the campaign has come to an end, which which I didn't know. But I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who donated to that. The money raised has been completely invaluable. It's helped me to gain a shed load of documents which I'm still trawling. And the last bit of money, so it was £100 that was left over, has been used as match funding towards a database which is currently being built, which is one of the reasons I haven't posted updates on there or been doing much in terms of my documentary research, because I need this database to be able to process the information effectively. Um, and yeah, so once that's done, the last bit of money from the GoFundMe campaign will go into that database. And I also got funding for the rest of the database from the Norfolk and Norwich Archaeological Society as well. So yeah, that'll be absolutely cracking. And then once that's done, I can actually start to do some really interesting analysis and things. And I also need to write the next blog for the Thetford research as well, because I've got to write up what happened in terms of divisions in Norfolk towards the end of 1940, because at that point, sorry, in history, things get extremely complicated with the entire county split up into sub areas and all this stuff, and it's a right mind rot. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So, what I want to do today is look at a series of images from the Imperial War Museum, which are called the Road Defences of Britain. These focus upon the interior and exterior of a anti-tank gun pillbox. I'm not going to call this a Type 28 because this one was housed a 6-pounder gun, and my research into other areas, in particular, southern part of East Anglia, so Essex and Suffolk, shows that these 6-pounder anti-tank gun pillboxes weren't called Type 28s; they were a localized design of their own type. And I'm not going to fall into the whole it's an anti-tank gun pillbox, therefore it's a Type 28 thing, because that's largely pointless. But that's something I'm working on in terms of an academic paper, which we'll look at. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So this series of images shows a 6-pounder anti-tank gun pillbox with the troops inside operating it. We're going to focus on a couple of these images. Also, thank you, Rich. Please do check out the Vickers Machine Gun Collection and Research Association. So recently I've been in contact with my mate Mike, who's been surveying some similar pillboxes somewhere down south. And yeah, I've been trying to work out various bits and pieces in relation to the 6-pounder gun. So the 6-pounder gun, these examples that were pulled out of stores were literal examples that had been in First World War era tanks. I think the male tanks had anti-tank guns, while the female tanks had machine guns overall. So these guns are quite interesting. They're a short barrel 6-pounder gun, 6-pound Hotchkiss, specifically designed, well, modified, I think, to be used in First World War era tanks. They retain the sponson plate, or the sponson, which is this thick armoured plate as well around the gun. These were brought out of stores to be used within specific pillboxes and open emplacements and other specifically designed emplacements during the Second World War as part of the anti-invasion defences of the UK. So the 6-pounder gun at the time, although over 20 years old at this point and used in the First World War, it was still an effective anti-tank gun. It could still knock out pretty much anything the Germans were fielding in 1940 and 41. As with all this kit, you know, anecdotally, people think these guns were crap because they were old, but in reality, this gun was more than capable of taking on anything the Germans were fielding in 40 and 41. Remember, at this time, the Germans weren't going to roll in with Tigers and Panthers and all this stuff. The German armour at this time was relatively light, relatively mobile, and all this stuff. You know, I think the only thing really in the German armoury at the time which could have caused trouble was the Sturmgeschütz or the Stug, due to its frontal armor, but it didn't mean that you couldn't take it out, you know, from the side. And if you look at if you watch my Molotov cocktail video as well, you don't have to blow up a tank to immobilize it and all this stuff to destroy it. Anyway, these images are pretty cool because they give us an insight into the interior of these pillboxes and give us a really useful insight into how they would have operated. So whenever I'm looking at these Imperial War Museum images, image references down here, first thing I do is go to the the caption on the back. So you'll often look at the object description, it's usually rather vague. All your information is on the back here. So this is really, really cool. So, you know, it's got this nice blurb, seen inside pillbox with gun crew at action stations. Should the threatened invasion of Britain materialise, the invader will find that he is running into serious opposition on the roadways of the country. Roadblocks and concrete pillboxes are numerous and will be brought into full use as these pictures show. They were taken in the Western Command. The anti-tank gun is manned by a Field Regiment Royal Artillery, not Home Guard. Ha 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 ha. Okay, bit more useful information here. So we know it's an anti-tank gun manned by the 98th Field Regiment Royal Artillery, Surrey Yeomanry at Ledsham, Wirral, Cheshire. Image taken on the 1st of October 1940. Should be 1940. Yeah, 1st of October 1940. So in terms of doing actual research, then we can see this is a field regiment of the Royal Artillery, again not the Home Guard as everyone thinks occupied and garrisoned pillboxes, and in this case we've got the 98th Field Regiment Royal Artillery Surrey Yeomanry at Ledsham Wirral in Western Command. So this gives us a couple of points in terms of doing research, so we could easily identify this specific unit's war diary. We could look at the Western Command war diary as well to get additional detail, and this bit of information that it's Ledsham, Wirral, Cheshire makes it easy to identify the local division, brigade, battalion in this area. So points of research for additional documentary research. Ideally, you don't want to just look at an image and go, oh look, it's a nice image. You want to use this as the basis for doing additional research. So looking at the image itself. So I was having a chat with Mike literally just this morning because he's trying to work out how many crew operated one of these 6-pounder guns, and I'd found a manual relating to the later 6-pounder gun, so the long barrel high velocity one that was introduced in late 42, 43, which is very different to this, but it gave us some pointers in terms of strategy. So from this image we can clearly see that a single 6-pounder gun would have had a crew of around 5. So we've got the gunner. I'm guessing this here is the is it either the second command, or the commander, or secondary gunner, or the loader. And we've also got an auxiliary here as well. So gunner, second in command / loader, auxiliary, possibly second or third gunner. Here we've also got 2 ammo bearers holding 6-pounder rounds here. If we zoom in, we get a bit of detail on those. So the 6-pounder fired what is termed shot. So any big, large caliber piece of ammunition today is called a shell. In reality, a shell and a shot are very different. A shell is literally a shell or a case, metal case which has explosive inside, and the idea behind that is it explodes, creates fragments which aren't shrapnel, they are fragments or splinters more accurately, and a shot is literally a solid piece of ammunition. If you bear with me a second, I'll just grab it. Grab an example. So I clearly planned this video very, very well. Right, so this is a 6-pounder case. This is what we see in the image. I haven't got the shot to go on top. Gives you an idea of the scale size of this thing. This is a 2-pounder anti-tank gun round. which is inert. It's got no explosive filling in at all. But this is the bit that does the damage. This is the shot. It is literally a solid piece of metal that travels at high velocity, strikes enemy armor, and ideally punches through. There is a cavity in the base for a tracer element so that you can see the trajectory of the shot as it travels through the air. Right, we compare that to a shell. So this is a French 75mm shell, which has partially detonated, not very effectively. But you can clearly see metal case, cavity on the inside for explosive. This one's, I think, point detonating or time fuse on the top. And when the explosive charge explodes, the case expands, ruptures, and creates splinters, not shrapnel. Shrapnel is something that you put inside a bomb. But again, any form of splinter today is referred to as shrapnel, which, as with all this stuff, I'm fairly certain has come about through American terminology. Okay, so these guys are carrying the 6-pounder shot. At their feet we have an ammunition case with additional 6-pounder shot here. We can see that they've got 2 rounds in kind of ready storage, ready to go into the gun. We've got an additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds there, possibly another 4 or 5 rounds here. To the left of the image, this little thing is really interesting. This is the packing for the rounds itself. So you can see the recesses into which you would place the base of the shells, or the head of the shell, which is this thing here, for storage. Really interesting stuff. Above the gun we also have a range card here, which would have had their arcs of fire defined. So this would have the lateral arcs within which the gun is to operate. It would also have the ranges to landmarks that they can see through the embrasure. This makes it easier to estimate range to the target that you're wanting to fire on. We can also see we've got a large gap around the sponson as well of the gun, which is something that Mike pointed out. So yeah, the range card was very important as it facilitated the firing of the gun. It allows you to quickly and easily estimate your range, but also make sure that you are operating the gun within your defined arc, so you don't accidentally hit or put troops that are adjacent to you in additional danger. We also have this bit of information here, which I'm not 100% sure that is. I don't think that's a range card, but that could be information about the operation of the gun. It could be effective range information, but given it's not in a ready position to view as you are operating the gun, it's possibly something along the lines of that. May even be a means of recording the number of shots that have been put through the gun, because you need to maintain the gun, and a lot of guns have to be serviced every couple of rounds or something like that. So I'm speculating on this, but that could be something along those lines. It's clearly a bit of information that's important, and they have put arm's length, but so they can refer to it. So something like that, yeah, possibly. May even be standing orders, so they would have. So I'm still trying to work out how these anti-tank gun pillboxes would have operated, but seeing everything else that I've seen into crews would have had standing orders, so they'd be told, right, in the event of invasion, you stand to, you do this in this situation, you do this in this situation. So at night, you try to illuminate targets, for example, or during the day you engage targets within your set arcs and all this stuff, because then you don't have to have someone running to your pillbox to tell you what to do. You know how to operate, and I think that could also be standing orders. What else have we got? They've got their respirator haversacks in the ready position, so gas attack was something that we see mentioned in the standing orders very frequently. So the troops had to be prepared for the dropping of gas, so they would have their respirators in the ready position. You can see at the back this is tied around with the bit of string that goes around. I've got my haversack up there, but I'm not grabbing that. You don't want to see my crotch. But yeah, that's tied around the back into the ready position, so you can quickly take the mask out, put it on. They're also wearing the helmets as well. Another little detail which I think is pretty cool is their boots don't appear to be hobnailed, so they've got the horseshoe plate on the heel, but I'm not seeing much in the way of additional hobnails as you would on a standard pair of boots, which on a concrete floor or a similar floor to this, hobnail boots would be a relative slipping hazard, which they were aware of. So yeah, another little detail there. Bottom right hand corner we've got sandbags for some reason, and I think in the background here, I'm not sure what this is. Gun cover, could even be a palliasse to sleep on or something similar. We've got an additional ammunition crate there in the back, but this gives us a really decent idea of how this gun would have gone into action in terms of, you know, if it was been operated, we'd have had the gunner, number 2 commander, loader, you know, whatever this chap is, and 2 ammunition bearers to bring ammunition to the gun when it's in operation. And this layout of how the troops are deployed around the gun is very characteristic of the time. You can also see the gun holdfast here as well. So another image on the outside. So this is the external view. The guy on the left has to be the commander. He would be, yeah, I'm fairly certain of it. This guy. So it's not this guy here. They've shifted things around a bit, but this guy who's a sergeant, as indicated by stripes, has to be the chap in charge of, you know, I'm fairly certain of that. He's got to be the bloke who's coordinating the fire of the gun. We also have another chap here on the right as well, but I think this gives us a decent idea of the setup in terms of observation from the gun. So one of those two would relay target information to the gunner. So, you know, AFV left, 500 yards, fire, you know, additional sandbags in each corner. Not sure what the purpose of these is. Could be a means of I don't know, controlling dust from when the gun's fired, but I don't know how that'd work. Embrasure itself is relatively rough and wide, stepped embrasures to stop incoming small arms and shot getting ricocheted into the pillbox itself. Horizontal timber shuttering with standard standard width, what's that going to be, about 20 centimeters, so a couple of inches wide, standard stuff that we see, relatively rough. Coming back to the interior, we've got another shot here of the interior, which gives us additional detail. So we've got the holdfast plate, and then the gun is mounted onto that to make sure the gun's level. We've also got a slight recess to the front of the gun to bring the gun further forward into the embrasure to create a wider arc of fire. I'd estimate from this image arc of fire is somewhere in the region of 60 degrees. I don't think 60, possibly to 90 degrees, maybe at the very most your arc of traverse, but I'd estimate more practically 60, 80 degrees. Left hand side of the gun, this image is very poor, but we can also make out a Ross rifle. I'm fairly certain that's a Ross. Could be a P14, not 100% sure, but yeah, we've also got some spares here, possibly for the gun itself, but again, not a very clear image. That looks a bit like a peaked cap, but I don't think it is. Notice the position the gunner has to take to actually view through the optical sight of the gun itself, so it's not very comfortable. In this image we can just about make out one of the 6-pounder rounds here, so we can see that if the gun's traversed left, the crew reorientate themselves to the right hand side of the gun. Yeah, he's got to be the loader, commander, gunner, and then the 2 ammo bearers there on the right. So they know how to move around the gun in different situations as well, which points heavily to these guys knowing exactly what they're doing. And yeah, I think that's all the detail we can get out of this image. Again, range card at the top here. We can't make out the detail of that, unfortunately, because it's a very poor image. If we've got the original negatives, we might be able to. But this shows you how important these images are. Oh yeah, let's just go to this one as well and get it to load. Similar situation here. We can see I think that's the firing mechanism for the gun. The breech is here. There was a shoulder piece that goes under the shoulder of the gunner so that they can traverse the gun. I don't think it's a thingy traverse. I can't think what they call it, but I don't think you use hand wheels or anything like that. I think it's more organic. Yeah, I'm assuming you can lock the gun for what's that? That's horizontal. So vertical, you can set your arcs for, set your range and lock that in place vertically. This plate here, which protrudes from the top of the gun, Mike has found recesses in some of his pillboxes which we think relate to this. Not 100% sure what this plate does, but it certainly relates to the vertical elevation and declination of the gun. We can also see here that the sergeant is back. He's the guy, well, he's probably the gunner for some, which is interesting. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how practical that would be because when this gun fires, it recoils and that goes straight into his chest. But anyway, so this is clearly staged. We've got ammo bearer maintaining the rounds. Here we've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I'd say 15 or so rounds in ready storage. They've got to be Ross rifles and 2 Ross rifles. Again, we can see the range card and possible standing orders. Oh, it does make me wonder from this image whether that range card is panoramic, so it's a replication of what they can see out the embrasure rather than what you get is a top down. Some often get a top down range card which has different arcs of the range and then lines going off to point out landmarks in the vicinity. That possibly could be panoramic, so you can look at that and go, right, okay, well the church spire over there is 500 yards away, something like that. We'll lay off that. Yeah, so let me just, yeah, and that'll, I think, do us today. But this shows us how important it is to know what you're talking about, how to interpret images such as this, and how useful they can be as a research aid. Again, the captions themselves give us additional information if you're a historian, or someone who knows what they're doing. Interestingly enough, I've just spotted this sponson is actually relatively thin. Usually the sponson was quite thick, but this looks like it's just a very thin piece of metal, which is interesting. I've not spotted that before. So usually the sponson was about, well, a couple of inches thick, let's say 10 centimeters thick. It was an armored bit of plate, but I've never seen this before. That's very interesting. I've not spotted that before. Anyway, this gives you an insight into why these images are extremely important. They're not just there to look pretty um, and something nice to look at. You can use these as a physical thing to glean information out which shows us how things like a pillbox would have operated, which is extremely important because a lot of information relating to the use of pillboxes either isn't outlined in manuals or was kind of made up on the fly but not necessarily documented in ways that we can access today. Another little thing I just want to point out with the 6 pounders is these would have been painted identically to this. So solid shot is indicated by black. These bands, I can't remember what they indicate, but they indicate the difference. I think it's the difference between practice shot and actual shot. You can clearly see these bands would have been very similar to this to indicate shot. So you can quickly go, right, this is shot, get that up the spout, fire it off, as opposed to high explosive or similar. It's a quick and easy way of referencing what type of ammunition you're firing. Anyway, like I say, images like this are a great resource. They're not just there to look pretty. We can use them as a physical research resource. We can use them to glean bits of information that we wouldn't necessarily get through fieldwork or documentary research. And again, this is a key process of archaeology. This is one of the rarest in terms of archaeology. The Second World War and more recent military defences or 20th century military defences are extremely unique in the fact that we have this massive documentary record, we have visual records in terms of photographs, and we can use these to glean information from these images, which help us to explain things that we see on site through parts of wider research. And they also provide us a decent starting point in terms of doing more research to identify these units, what they were up to, what they got up to during the war. So this, as always, has been a bit longer than I thought it'd be. 20 minutes, not too bad. So after all that, thank you so much for watching. If you want me to do more of these, let me know. As always, I'm chipping away at the other stuff. And the aim of this channel is not for me to become a YouTuber. I don't want that. It's just for a means of me getting information out to people and doing some bits and pieces that I wouldn't otherwise do. And it's also, I find these videos easier to do than writing blogs and stuff because I don't have to sit down and spend hours writing and correcting spelling mistakes. So yeah, as always, thank you for watching. I hope this has been useful. If you want more things like this, I can seek out some more images and things like that. Please do check out the Vickers Machine Gun Collection and Research Association because Rich over the years has been absolutely fantastic. I can't thank him enough. I think I've mentioned before in previous videos, in the early 2000s when I was starting out, I think Richard started out at the same time, and he He did some really useful things such as publishing Second World War era manuals online, which allow me to get this insight into an aspect of Second World War defence in the UK that I wouldn't have got otherwise. So please do check out Richard's website. Also, the Vickers Machine Gun Association's Patreon or Patreon is well worth subscribing to. He's extremely active on Patreon or Patreon, and yeah, it pays for itself in no time. It's a vital resource and well worth the money and well worth your funding. And yeah, anyway, after all that, I'll shut up and I'll leave you to it. Thanks so much. I'll catch you later.